Welcome back to Off Record On Point, the workplace culture podcast with that all-important twist. I'm Julia Linehan, founder and CEO of The Digital Voice.
And I'm Kasey Long. Today, we're joined by professor, vocal coach, and internationally published author of I'm Speaking, Jessica Doyle Mekkes. And as always, you can check out the description for our usual list of resources to keep the conversation going. Here's a sneak peek at what's in store.
Would you recommend as well that people get involved in amateur musical theatre because that will help them in their business presentation skills?
100%. That was actually exactly what I was going to say. The same skills that make you successful as an actor make you successful as a human being.
Can anybody, anyone listening to this, anyone out there, no matter how shy they might be, can they become a great speaker?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a skill. You know, it's a skill like any other skill.
There aren't as often as many women willing to take those speaking slots. Why do you think that could be, and how can we keep encouraging women to change it?
There is a culture, and I see this as a performer, as a singer as well, that there's a culture of do it for the experience, or there's a culture of, you do it for the.
This will do you
yes,
good.
Exactly.
This is
yes,
great
giving
for
us
you.
your time is going to do you good, and I think that has to change.
Today's episode is all about cultivating confidence, harnessing the power of your voice, and empowering women in their careers. Julia, what can you tell us?
I love this topic. As anyone who knows me knows, I'm a big fan of trying to encourage confidence in everybody, but especially in women. And as with the gender pay gap, there's also a gender confidence gap. Women often do feel confident at work, but research has suggested that it actually goes under recognized, which contributes to slower career progression. And let's not forget that the stats have come out, and I think it's by a recruitment company called Seek, that shows that just 25% of women are unlikely to apply for a job if they didn't have all the skills compared to 15% of men. And it's problems like that that's about challenging doubts, systematic bias in our own minds, and also the ability for women and men to harness the power of their voice. And that's a really powerful step in building confidence and beating any lingering biases. And we're going to talk about all of that and more. So very, very delighted to have you here with us today, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Thank you.
Jessica, good to have you here. I'm going to go first because I've got to hit you with the first question. The Digital Voice, so our company is all about your voice amplified. And as you can imagine, I'm a big believer in being bold, be loud, be proud, and all of those things. We love that your whole focus is about finding your voice. So we wanted to know if you can give us some tips and tricks for anyone who's still trying to find theirs.
Sure. So I think the first thing is, what does that even mean, right? What does it mean to find your voice? And that's a question I get asked a lot. And I've boiled it down into a two-part answer.
Ooh.
One part is that it means getting to know your voice physically. And so for many people, for many women, we don't really think about our voices until we need them and they're not there. And so things to know are that the voice is largely made up of skeletal muscle. So that is the same kind of muscle you work in the gym, which means that just like your peach, it can be trained, it can be made more flexible, it can be made stronger. That also means that it needs to be warmed up, it needs to be cooled down, it needs to be hydrated, right? So much of the clarity of our voice, if you want to sound clear and confident, so much of that has to do with hydration. And the voice itself does not have its own hydration system. So it is entirely dependent upon your body for that. So that's something that I think a lot of women, a lot of people don't recognize is one of the substances that makes up the voice is very much like Jell-O. And that substance, the jiggle of that Jell-O, is what gives us our clear, brilliant sound. So you can imagine if you dehydrate Jell-O, what that is going to do. And that's when we get into, particularly in the morning when we wake up and we're dehydrated or we're tired and you have, I call it the whiskey troll. You get up in the morning and you sound, you have that morning sound. And so drinking water early, drinking water often is really, really important.
And probably drinking it on stage as well. Big record. You
Yes.
do see people start going.
Yes. And I think the other thing to note is it takes about 4 hours for the water that you drink to actually hydrate the voice. So I joke that if you have an early morning, yes,
Me and
I
Joy are
can't.
both drinking water right now. I'm
We're all just gulping our water.
thirsty thinking about it.
So if you do have an early morning event that you want to make sure you're sounding your best for, it's really important that upon waking that you're starting to hydrate and get that going. So that's sort of the first part for me of finding the voice. The other part of it is dealing largely with that internal voice or the voice in your head, right? And we all have it that shows up, I say, when you go after something new and sparkly. That is like, you can't do it. You're not good enough. No one's going to listen to you. I say in the book that I've named my voice. Her name is Sheila, and she's very mouthy. And when she shows up, I have to tell her to have a seat in the lobby and just wait because I don't have time for her shit today, right? And I think that that's sort of the back and forth for me, and that I work with clients on is, okay, what are the physical things that we can do, like warming up the voice, which if you have a straw, I saw you have a straw in your water.
Yeah,
That
I
is
do.
such a perfect tool for warming up the voice. So all you do is just put it in your mouth and you're just
I'm
going to
doing this
hum.
right now.
Yeah,
Kasey
perfect.
is now acting this out for those listening and not seeing.
Yeah, you're just going to hum through it.
Go on, Kasey.
Just like that. Yeah, just like that. And you can hum kind of up and down, like little sirens. Yes, you could hum. That's wonderful.
Thank
You can
you.
hum the melody of a song. And
That's
what,
so funny.
yeah, so
That's really great.
what that does is if you think of speaking or singing, like sitting on a swing and having to pump your legs to get going through a straw, it's like somebody giving you a push. So it really helps recalibrate the muscles. It helps the air to work really effectively. It's like 2 to 3 minutes before you go on to speak or before you have your first meeting of the day. Super silly, but also really, really effective.
We're going to have to get you some metal straws now, Julia.
It's really timely because I've just been doing presentation training with one of our clients, and I'm a big I focus a lot on talking to people about their vocal clarity, and it's about pitch, pause, pace, and stress. But the biggest one I always say it is about breathing. Taking those breaths before you walk on stage, 3 breaths, and on the third breath you lower your shoulders. And the most important thing is that first sentence as you come out, because often that's where people's voices catch. And if you sound nervous, you're then stuck in your head going, I was nervous. So I said, if you can get that right, and I was saying, I tend to walk out on stage holding the mic, talking as I'm going, almost just to flex out. So I'm not starting the session with, hi, I'm Julia Linehan or anything like that. That's more nerve wracking. I'm flowing into it, which I think is really interesting. But I'm going to take on board that water because I was doing a podcast the other morning. I was a guest at 7:30 and I get up early, but I was only 2 hours up. And I felt that. And now that explains it with the water.
I've just never
I've
thought of the
learned
voice
something. I love
in
it.
that literal
No.
physical sense. But that's so interesting.
Yeah, and the muscles are small. The whole mechanism is about the size of your thumb, but they work the same way. They work the same way as the biggest muscles. I love what you said, Julia, about the breath. And I think just to tack on a little bit to that, something that a lot of people don't realize is that the breath, not only is it the gas for our voice, right? If your voice was a car, your breath is the gas, but it's also the gateway to the autonomic nervous system. So it's also the key to either the fight or flight and the rest or digest. And all of those nerve endings that activate your fight or flight response that make us nervous when speaking, they're at the top of the lungs, right? They're at the top of those lobes. And the ones that calm us down are at the bottom of the lungs. And so when we're nervous and we start taking those shallow breaths,
it's all right
what
here.
we're really doing is sending our body a distress call. Absolutely. And it only takes, that's why deep breathing calms you down, because you're activating the nerve endings that are actually putting that parasympathetic nervous system into play. And the thing to keep in mind also is that it takes like a split second for that fight or flight to take place, but it takes like an hour for the calm down to happen. And so that's why it's so important to take those breaths. That's why it's so important to think about breathing deeply and really filling those lungs and activating those nerve endings before. So straw hums, drinking water, deep breathing. You'll be set to
Love
go.
it.
I've got a feeling I'm going to be doing straw hums before all our podcast
Good.
recordings
I
now
like it.
and
I love
freaking out all of our guests.
it.
Jessica, I want to shift gears a little bit. And based on your fantastic explanation of find your voice, I'm sure we already know the answer, but I'm curious, can anybody, anyone listening to this, anyone out there, no matter how shy they might be, can they become a great speaker?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a skill. It's a skill like any other skill. Here's the thing I will say though. I talk about in the book how I call it the American Idol effect. And back, in the early 2000s, when American Idol first started, everybody thought they were a singer, right? And they lined up around because their grandma, told them that they were the next Dolly Parton or whatever. It didn't matter if they had never taken a singing class, if they had never taken a voice lesson, if they'd never sung in a
They
choir.
just went
Yeah,
for it,
they
didn't
knew that
they?
they were going to be great. And I think that a large part of that is because really great singers make it look easy, right? And I would say the same thing about speaking, that really great speakers make it look easy. And so a lot of people think, oh, well, cool, I'm the next TED Talk. I'm the
Simple
next,
enough.
right? It's simple enough. And the reality is that like anything that is nuanced, right? To become really good at it takes hundreds, if not more hours, right? Years to become good at it. But I think because it looks easy and because we live in this culture of instant gratification, most people try it, it doesn't go well, and they're like, well, then I can't do it, right? As opposed to thinking about the work.
We always say to people, and I really focus on this: if you fear something, do it again and again and again. And I also say to people, when you see me present, and I present a lot, and I do look very relaxed, I'll interact with the audience. It is practiced. I practice in front of the mirror again and again because what I'm trying to see is, do I look like I'm inspired? Do I make myself feel energized? Does everything flow? Does it work? If I run out of breath in a sentence? And I always say, use the mirror. That's your guide because you're going to see what the audience will see. So I think that's important. But I am curious. Again, those are things to do. Flip it. What would you advise don't do when you're coaching
Ooh.
self-confidence and speaking?
Oh, absolutely. Well, one would be don't under prepare, I guess.
Yes.
Don't wing it, right? Don't wing it. Winging it is for the birds. I think that you need to know, and I talk about this in the book as well, you need to know your topic. Think of your favorite movie, right? Or think of your favorite book, your favorite dessert, whatever it is, the thing that you are very passionate about and gets you excited to talk about. And then talk about that. Tell me about it, right? Because you know who directed it, you know who starred in it, you know the other, the behind the scenes bloopers, when that Starbucks cup was left, on Game of
In the
Thrones,
shot. Yeah.
right in the shot. And that's how well versed you need to be on your topic, whether it is a presentation or a pitch meeting or an interview or whatever. You need to be able to talk about it with the same energy and the same detail as you would talk about your favorite television show, right? And that takes work. So I would say the for me, a lot of the anxiety that I see with clients and that I see with women is being underprepared or is not realizing how much preparation it takes. I love, Julia, that you said get in front of a mirror. I second that 100%. The other thing I will add is that you need to record yourself. One, so you know what you look like, but two, so you know what you sound like. Because if you've ever listened to yourself speak, you're like, ooh, I don't sound like that, right? And it's true. In your head, you don't, because in my head, I'm getting my voice coming out of my mouth, coming back at my ears, but I'm also getting all of these little vibrations that happen in the bones of my face that get conducted to my inner ear, and they have sound. And so that changes the way that my voice sounds. But my audience only gets what's coming out of my mouth, right? And like it or not, all that really matters is what your audience gets. So it's
I love that.
imperative to really know how you sound, you have to record yourself and listen back. So if you're practicing and not doing that, you're definitely doing yourself a disservice.
It makes sense because I think all the time, like how many, even if it's just silly home videos, everyone
Hmm.
has been recorded, and then you go, oh my God, I'm talking in the background. Like,
Yeah.
please delete that. Voice sounds so
Hmm.
strange, and it makes sense now at least.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Despite stereotypes that women are getting out there and speaking a lot, whether it's at, for us, it's at different industry events or networking events, there aren't as often as many women willing to take those speaking slots. Why do you think that could be, and how can we keep encouraging women to change it?
Sure. Well, the first thing I would say is make sure all those events are paying their speakers,
Yeah.
right? I would say that there is a culture, and I see this as a performer, as a singer as well, that there's a culture of do it for the experience, or there's a
Yeah.
culture of, you do it for the.
This will do you
Yes,
good.
Yeah.
This
exactly.
is
Yes.
great for
Giving us your
Yeah.
you.
time is going to do you good. And I think that has to change. And I think for women in particular,
Mm.
we're conditioned to say yes, right? We're conditioned to make people happy. We're conditioned to say, let me do whatever it takes,
Yeah.
to make this successful and to help you. And I think there needs to be a shift in saying, if I'm going to give of my time and I'm going to give of my skills that I have now spent who knows how much money and years developing, I need to be fairly compensated for that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first thing that needs to happen. The second one I would say is that there's been a lot of research done that, and you see this in I think most broadly in the Me Too movement, right? That
Mm.
because the Me Too movement started like back in 2007 or 2010, and it didn't really become
To like
mainstream,
lockdown-ish.
right? Yeah, until Alyssa Milano and Hollywood came out. And I think that's the way things work, is that women are silent until one woman, particularly a woman with a platform, says something, right? Or does the thing, takes the speech, gives the speech. And then all of a sudden, that inspires other women to want to do that. And what's difficult is that getting those people who are leaders and who are in the eye or who are influencers, to do that and to speak on the topics and to pay them fairly and to make all of that happen. But I think that's a big part of it as well, is women feeling empowered by seeing others going through that process.
I love that. I mean, I think it is important to follow others' leads. And I'm part of the Digital Leading Ladies in the UK, and we really support and cheerlead other women to get involved. So I think that's interesting. But I want to ask you something and go off on a bit of a tangent. So I believe myself to be a failed actress. I always wanted to be. I wanted to be an actress, a copywriter, a journalist, and I ended up doing all these things in my wonderful job looking after the digital voice in our
Mhm.
clients. I would have loved to sing, and I sing with gusto, but slightly badly out of bad alto. I'm in awe of the fact that you teach musical theatre, and I wanted to know this: what what skills do you need to excel at musical theatre? Would you recommend as well that people get involved in amateur musical theatre because that will help them in their business presentation skills?
100%. That was actually exactly what I was going to say. The same skills that make you successful as an actor make you successful as a human being,
So maybe
right?
you're a successful actress, Julia,
That
actually.
means hang on, that means I'm a failed a failed actress and failed in
No, the
work.
opposite. The opposite. Yes, in fact, my husband is the director of a marketing agency, and we talk about that all the time, about how when he does interviews for new positions, oftentimes they're with entry level, right out of college people, and he's like, they need acting training. Like, they need your students. They need that because it is confidence in speaking.
Toner and
Yes, it's
yeah.
energy, how to
Yup.
send that energy out at your audience, how to focus and maintain a storyline, right? Because that's what it is. That's what we're doing, is storytelling all the
We
time,
love it.
right?
That's so
Yeah.
us.
How to use your voice and your body to enhance what it is that you're saying, how to improv, how to think quickly on your feet, right? All of those skills that we hone with actors are used every day by people in business and in every industry. So I think you are a success. Julia.
Yeah.
I think you are a successful actor.
Do you know what? I'll take that. Casey's part of a choir, and so's Akini on our team, and I'm so envious because I want to join a rock choir because I kind of think because
Oh
I've got
my
quite a deep
gosh.
voice, but I've always and I really do. I love to sing, but I just have never. I think I don't have enough depth of my lungs aren't that brilliant. So I just think it just brings me joy. But I luckily
Yeah.
Yeah.
know it doesn't bring other people joy, so I keep it
Well,
very,
you
very
let me know
private.
if you want voice lessons, Julia. You let me
Oh
know.
my
We'll make it
God, give me
happen.
my chance. I probably just wanted to just hone in though on the skills you need. So say go take it out from the amateur bit and those people who are listening, but also going from your side, do you see as a professional within musical theatre, is there skills, a skill set you need, or is it not? Is it just so many things, or is it something that can't be taught? It's passion, it's energy.
I would say that the skills as a professional, yes, your skill set needs to be up there. You need to the triple threat: singing, acting, dancing, right? At the highest level. The other part of that is you need to really, really be resilient because for every 100 no's, or if 100 auditions, there are 99 no's, there's one yes, that's a job, right? And the other part of that is that the job of being a performer is not performing, it's auditioning because every show closes. Even Phantom of the Opera on Broadway finally closed, right? Every gig ends. And then unless you are one
Like
of,
always on.
yes, unless you are one of a few, and I mean a few people who are offer only, you're right back out auditioning. In fact, one of my very favorite Broadway singers, Carolee Carmello, who is a 3-time Tony Award nominee. She's like a 5-time Olivier nominee, like
My gosh.
very successful. She did an Instagram live recently about all of the auditions where she did not get the job last year. And I was like, oh shit, if Carolee Carmello isn't getting
Yeah.
cast, like what are the rest of us doing? Right. So I think, yeah, it takes consistently keeping those skills up because it is muscular, it's motor performance, it's motor learning, right? And so if you're not using it, you're losing it. So it's continuously keeping those skills up, and it's also keeping yourself up, right? And being resilient in the face of something that can be very very difficult.
You mentioned there that it's about auditioning and the hundreds and hundreds of auditions. It's more about that. Nerves are a problem for a lot of people, whether it be the professional on Broadway through to anybody on any team. What's your tips for combating nerves? Because we were talking about this morning, going, can you spot the signs of nervousness? Yes. You know, the nail biting, the nervousness, the fidgeting, the sweating. So it is a very visible trait, and I think it's the one thing that people fear the most is looking nervous. What would be your advice? How can they easily combat the nerves aside from the breath work?
So I've boiled it down to 3 things. I call them my 3 commandments for conquering fear, for dealing with performance anxiety. The 3 P's. The first one is prime, and prime means that you can actually put steps in place to make your brain and your body not only do their best work but also be less nervous. And that's the basics. That is sleeping. That is hydrating. It's eating, exercising, and breathing. Those are the 5 things. And of course, we think of those as the very basic,
Like
your
looking
mom
after
tells you,
yourself.
yeah, the mom-based self-care. But they are the first things that go out the window when we get busy, right? I can't tell you how many times I'm at the end of the workday or I'm going to pick up my daughter from kindergarten and it's like, I've had nothing to eat today, or all I've had is coffee all day, right? And we often think, okay, that's not good for me. But what we don't realize, and this is particularly sleep and hydration, is how much those negative effects, or how negative those effects are on our performance, on our creative performance, on our mood, on our ability to focus and concentrate. The other thing to take note of is we know that when we're thirsty or when we're hangry, that things don't go well, right? But the ability to focus and concentrate, our brain cells actually need water. They take in water, they hold on to water. And so that memory connection and working from old information in your brain to new information, they have to be hydrated. And the other part of that is that the feel-good chemicals, the ones that the serotonin and the dopamine that you want flowing when you go out on stage, they require protein. They eat protein.
Ooh.
So the second P is pinpoint, and that just means focus and how to develop focus. And Julia, you talked about this, being in front of the mirror and seeing what it is that I'm doing. I also highly recommend working with a partner, because a lot of times people think, okay, I'm really scared of what might happen, right? That someone's cell phone might go off. I might get off track and not be able to get back on. I might be asked a question that I'm not prepared for, right? Or not be able to answer will throw me off. So what you can do is you can prepare for that, is have your partner have their phone go off, right? Or ask you an off base question or whatever it might be, so that that fear of the unknown becomes known, right? So that's the second one. And then the third one is power. And that's just courage. That's saying, okay, I've prepared my body, I've primed, I've focused, and now I've got to do it.
You just got to get
Right.
yourself psyched up a little
Yeah,
bit.
exactly. You just got to be your own hype woman, right? A little bit. And
I love it.
3 Ps to hype yourself. Got it.
That's
Got it.
amazing. Well, you've mentioned a couple times where all this fabulous information that you're sharing with us is in your book. I'm curious to know though, Jessica, why did you choose to write a book, and how difficult was it to write it, just in general?
so the idea for writing the book came really because the women in my life, and I mean my close friends, were struggling, and we would just have coffee or whatever and be talking, and they would share about how they were either being taken advantage of at work, or there were moments where they needed to go in and ask their boss for something, but they were unsure of how to do it, right? And these are women that are at the top of their game professionally, and they're saying, I've been in school for X number of years, I've been in the workforce for X number of years, but nobody ever teaches you how to do this. And so I thought about it and sort of looked at the literature, and I was like, okay, there's a lot of books on public speaking. There are a lot of books on female empowerment, but there doesn't seem to be any crossover in terms of how to use your voice in order to empower yourself, right? How to speak clearly, how to speak confidently. And I was like, well, that's kind of my skill set, because I
Yeah.
am a vocal coach. I work with voices. And as an acting teacher, I work with performance anxiety. And so that's really where the idea came from. It was a very long process, and I credit my wonderful agent, Catherine Sands, with getting the book published during a pandemic because,
Oh, wow.
right, I signed with her, and she was so wonderful about helping me craft the proposal and sending those things out. And we were getting all this traction, and then COVID hit.
Oh
And
my
so the
gosh.
publishing industry, as with everything else, totally shut down. And by the time it came back, they were a year behind with trying to get the titles out that were supposed to come out before. So no one was taking new work, right? So it was a process, but she just kept telling me, Jessica, good books get published, and just hang in there. And so we did, and the book was purchased, and I have it right here.
Let's see it. Oh,
Yeah,
amazing. Well, she wasn't wrong. Good books
she
do get
Oh,
has.
published.
it's got a good for the listeners. It has a large mouth,
It
which
does.
is always what we like. We use that motif loads on ours. Amazing. I think that's really interesting. I'm curious though, when you were writing it, did you feel that you learned anything about speaking that while you wrote it that surprised you? Or did you flex anything and go, I'm writing this and it's not sitting right, or I'm writing this and I'm now going to take it on board more and use that as part of my speaking training?
Oh, 100%. A lot of the research and the science, particularly behind breathing. There's a book by, his name is, I think it's James Nestor. It's called Breathing, a Lost Art. And I cite that a lot in the book. And that was all of the information about the nerve endings and about,
Like the
all of the
physical.
impacts. Yeah, the physical impact of breathing. And as a singer, I talk about breathing all the time, right? And I know how it works and how it's supposed to work for singing, but those inner workings and how it affects, your mental health and your mental status. That was a big knowledge. It was a gap and now has been filled for me. And I speak on that a lot. I would say the other things are I really have to police myself now. And I did a panel at East Carolina where I teach 2 weeks ago. And one of my things that I was talking about was don't apologize. Don't start speaking and apologize. And because I see this with my students, I see it with my clients. We get up there and say, I'm sorry, I'm not that prepared, or I'm not as prepared as I should be, or I'm sorry, this might not go well. Right. And we think we're giving ourselves a safety net in case things don't go well. What we're really doing is setting the expectation that
yourself
things
up
are
to
not going to
fail.
go well.
Yeah,
Right.
becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, like you just spoke it into
Absolutely.
existence.
And so we're in front of this wonderful audience, and this young woman, they did a Q&A at the end, and she said, well, will you sing for us? And I've been sick for like a month. I mean, I hadn't been singing. My voice went from no voice to just I'm only now really
Sounds
coming
great
out of.
now. Yeah, you
Well, thank
found it
you. It's
again.
finally coming out. And of course, everyone in the audience is like, oh, yes, we'll do it at the end. How wonderful. And I'm thinking, oh, how wonderful, And at the end, I was like, I've been sick. And they were like, no, don't apologize. And I was like, oh, shit. Like that was what I said. And so I've had to you really recognize it. I recognize it a lot in my emails, where I have to stop saying like, I feel like, or I just feel like, or I'm sorry, it took me a moment to get back to you, things like that. And I was like, wow, yeah, I'm just as guilty as, as everybody
Yes,
else
anyone.
with this. Yeah.
Oh, that's so true. Well, I want to pivot back to staying on the book, but pivoting back to actually having it published. We've talked about it on other episodes, have talked about different AI, Chat GPT arriving on the scene. Publishers were calling that they were suddenly receiving hundreds of manuscripts a day that were AI written books. It's definitely harder now than probably ever to get published, which is a credit to your wonderful book. How would you say that you stood out against others for anyone else that's trying to get a book published?
I will say that AI, not only from writing, but from the voice world, is terrifying because now all of a sudden, like voiceover work and things like that, like a colleague of mine who I often partner with, she's a dialect coach, and so we work together a lot. And she was like, "This is going to end my entire industry
Oh my
because
gosh.
and that's a whole other topic, but." Yeah, but I will say with writing, the first thing that really helped me, I will say when I decided to write the book, I had no idea what I was doing.
Okay.
I knew I wanted to do it. I've always wanted to, I love to write. I love words. I love lyrics. I knew I wanted to write something. No idea what I was doing. And so I just Googled and said, how do you write a pitch letter to an agent? And so I wrote a pretty good query letter. And I will say that's the most important part, is the hook in your query, is that one sentence at the beginning. Mine was, this is not a book on public speaking. Public speaking is a middle-aged white guy standing at a podium telling you things you don't want to know about a topic you're not all that interested in. He thinks he's funny. His mustache is funny. This is a book about finding your voice and using it fearlessly. So that was mine.
To get the hook, nail the hook.
Yeah,
Love
that
that.
was a credit to my dad, who has a mustache and was once told when he was teaching that he thinks he's funny, but his mustache is funny. He is funny. I would say that's the main one. And the other thing is that you have to realize, and I think this was what set me apart and what really helped me. Publishing is just like acting, in that it has to be talent, timing, and luck. I mean, that's really what it is you have to be the right thing at the right time with the right person.
But if you've not put your hat in the ring to even give yourself a
Well,
chance, I think that's
exactly.
what we're encouraging people that are listening to just don't hold back. You don't know until you try, and don't fear it, but accept that you've got to have that big resilience
Yes, you do.
shroud
It's a
around you.
long process. And as an actor, I was used to that. So I was like, okay, I'm used to the no. And I will say, like, for me, I actually had another agent decline the book, but she said, you know what, this isn't for me, but I know someone who would, and her name is Jessica Sinsheimer. Thank you. Who
Thank you, Jessica.
yes, who said, I know a colleague of mine who would love this, and you can use my name when you email her. And that's what got me to the top of the pile. So, the connections, like in any other industry, maintaining connections, maintaining relationships, asking people in your life who may have published to read. I just did this for another aspiring author. I read her query letter, gave her some notes, and I said, if you would like to send this to my agent, you can use my name uh, as the
Paying
recommendation.
it forward. That's
Yeah,
great.
absolutely. And I think that is so important.
Massively.
With nonfiction, it's a little bit different because you write a proposal, which is basically a business proposal, because publishing companies are far more interested in how you're going to sell your book and is there a market for the book than they are with the book itself. So I didn't actually write the book until after it sold. I wrote a 50-page proposal with my platform, who I was, how I was going to sell it, why it was pertinent. And I'll tell you, the other thing is, it didn't sell, it didn't sell, it didn't sell. Kamala Harris got elected, the Me Too movement took off, and the book sold. And so I think that's the other part of it in terms of timing is it has to be, if you're going to write nonfiction, you have to really know what's going on in the
That's the
world.
timing part.
Well, getting your book published, which sounds like a fantastic triumph, has there ever been in a moment, acting, singing, teaching, where you've had to stand up for yourself? And if you did, how do you go about it? And what strengths have you needed to keep that resilient face on?
There have been lots of times, and there's been times when I've done it, and there have been times when I haven't. When I was younger, I was working for a theater company, and the artistic director was leaving, and he mentioned to me that I might want to interview for the job. He thought I had leadership skills and I would be good, and he said, "You just need to speak up more." And so over the next few months, I did. I started really voicing my opinion. I started asking more questions, and it came time for the interview. And I said, here's my plan. Here's how we're going to put more butts in seats. Here's how we're going to have a successful season. And he said, "Jessica, you know, you used to be so easy." He said, just ask Jessica and she would do it. She was the gal Friday. And now you've become difficult. And I didn't get the job.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so that's a time when I didn't really speak up for myself, because I think I just said, "Okay, thank you."
You're just so shocked by it. Like, it's so hard when you're caught off guard in the moment like that.
And I was thinking, like, this is what you asked me to do. Like, you told me to be more vocal as a leader, and I was. And now all of a sudden, because I'm not just listening to you and doing what you say, I'm difficult, right? So I think that's a reality, and this is also why you have to weigh not speaking up versus speaking up, and how important it still is to speak up, right? Because the reality is there are consequences. There are consequences professionally, there are consequences personally.
Maybe it's about aligning those as long as it stays true to your values.
Yes.
Because if they don't like what you've got
Mm-hmm.
to say,
Right.
then they're not the right person. They're not the right. It's not the right job. It's not the right place. And this won't be the first or last instance it happens. Maybe you're right, though. It's not just saying it and having the strength to say no. It's being able to justify it clearly, calmly, but equally, like as you said, you just went, "Oh, okay," when he came back at you. It's almost being ready with that second vocal strength of saying, "No, I stand by this. It's not about me being difficult. It's simply about me allowing myself to do X," or whatever it is. It's that comeback.
Absolutely. And that's something that I wish I would have done. I was young, I was nervous. He was in a position of power over me. And I will say that I've learned from that coming forward now, I am more apt to speak up for myself. I joke that I'm someone who helps others do this, and I still sometimes am like, "Oh God, I'm going to break out in hives," because it's nerve wracking, right? To
I think,
to
yeah.
say those things. But I think the big thing is you have to remind yourself is it's okay if they don't like me, right? Like, it's okay. I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea. They can still respect me, right? Like, yes, I can be kind, I can be fair, I can be compassionate, but I can also be strong. And I don't have to change my ideals. I don't have to bend from those things that are deal breakers for me, right? I don't have to say yes when, excuse me, the best thing for me would be to say no. And if I don't get it, it's not for me. And if they don't like me, sometimes that's okay.
I think as long as We always say, be bold, be brave, be you. And as long as you do that. But you mentioned being nervous. Well, you are potentially
Oh
going to be
my
nervous because you're about to
gosh.
hit my quick fire round.
Okay, I'm ready.
Jessica, you have to answer the first thing that comes into your mind. We're going to get under the hood of Jessica Doyle Mekkes and see what you're all about. Here we go. What's your favorite musical theatre song?
Send in the clowns.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I love that one. It makes me cry though. Favorite book?
Mine? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm speaking, available in all good bookshops.
Yes, exactly. Probably. No, favorite nonfiction book. I'm a huge Glennon Doyle
Yeah, too
fan.
bad. The
Um,
Chamelea's giving thumbs up.
yes, as with the rest of the world, I'm also a huge Brene Brown fan.
Two very good choices. Okay, Jessica, let me give you a harder one. Favorite quote?
It's Dolly Parton, and it is when opportunity knocks, answer the door, even if you're in your bathrobe.
Or
Yay.
maybe especially if you're in your
Yes.
bathrobe if you're Dolly Parton.
Always
Um,
be ready.
what's your
Yeah.
what's your favorite time of day and what do you do during it?
So it used to be when I owned a vocal studio for a long time and I didn't work till the afternoons. I didn't have kids yet. And so I would sleep in and go to the gym and then I would be up late. So now it's like 5 a.m. is really my
Yeah.
favorite time of day. That's when I wrote my book was, in the early morning. And now it's really my favorite part is to get up very early, to have my cup of coffee, to have a moment, to get that day
Go
started
on the
for me.
5 a.m. club.
She's queen of the 5 a.m. club.
I love it. It's my peace and quiet. I did say to my husband Carl the other day, if anybody dared get up during my power hour, my golden hour, I'd be like, what, what are
Yeah,
you
yeah,
doing with my
exactly.
favorite
Hmm.
time of day? This,
Hmm.
I have a set routine and
Hmm.
it's wonderful. I love that. Well, wonderful. Well, now I know that you're awake at that time. I can chat to you. What's a favorite piece of advice you've been given?
Get the money up front. No, that's
Oh,
that was from my that was from my uncle when I, which is a good one. Which is a good one.
That is a good one.
This is my dad's, and my dad is a professor and an author as well. And he said that the one who does the work does the learning, and I love that. That you have to, if you want to learn something new, whether it's academic or not, you have to put the time in, right? That you can't just wish for it. You have to actually go
the
through.
one
And
who does the work does the learning.
yeah, that's been the touchstone of my teaching, of my consulting, that we have to do it. You have to go through the process.
Wonderful. Final one of your faves is favorite top tip that will set people apart when they're speaking. So for somebody to go when they're speaking to be known as a brilliant speaker, what's the top tip that will set them apart?
Own where you're at, the experiences you've had, and whether that's a lot or a little, right? That know that they will connect. If you connect authentically to your material and you bring your whole self to it, other people will also connect to it.
Amazing. Honestly, I think that is so important and such great advice. So thank you. We could keep talking to you for hours, Jessica.
I
And I think
know.
you've really infused confidence. And I think my one for the top tip actually is mine is always smile because even you can't help it. When you smile, your voice changes, the tone changes, your face lights up. And that's it, that's how to if you struggle with talking in a monotone way, the moment you smile, it lights up. So there's my little one. But I'm going to give some to wrap up some of Jessica's takeaways that I've noticed down, making your voice heard, practice, record so you can see what you look like as well as practicing in the mirror. Breathe and remember your primes of sleep, eating, breath work, protein. The prime will be the basis and the foundations for success. Layer on pinpoints and that focus and top it up with some power, using your voice and body to enhance what you're saying. I think that's so powerful. And I think work at it. The more you put in, the more you'll get out. So I think those are mine. And hopefully, there's so many I could have selected, but I hope to do you justice, Jessica.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We are so glad to have had you here for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us. That is a wrap. But as always, there is so much more to the conversation here. So don't forget, you can check out our website for more reading and resources. And be sure to check out Jessica's book, I'm Speaking, Every Woman's Guide to Finding Your Voice and Using It Fearlessly. Thank you again, Jessica. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Off Record On Point. I'm Julia Linehan.
And I'm Kasey Long. Enjoyed the conversation? Reach out and let us know by rating and reviewing on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. And be sure to follow to never miss an episode.
You can always stay connected with us at www.thedigitalvoice.co.uk and across all our social platforms. Just look out for The Digital Voice.
Join us again next time for another undercover industry deep dive. All off record, all on point.